Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Morning.
Morning. Hey, Mo, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Hey, Brad, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining.
Good. Yeah, absolutely.
Kyle, good to see you.
Hey there. Afternoon, morning,
Morning, afternoon.
all the above.
We got folks from all over the world, I believe, at least on the invite. So I think we got good evening and good night as well. Just wait for Sydney to join and a few others here, and we can go ahead and get started. All right. Well, as we before we jump in, we'll just give a quick kind of overview here and a quick just housekeeping. So thank you for those that have been part of this. You're probably tired of hearing the spiel, but for those that are new, thanks for joining. We started this a few weeks ago, I guess a couple of months ago now, as we were starting to stare into a very uncertain future as an industry and wondering kind of what was next for marketing. I had found that I was texting other CMOs in my network or calling other people and asking, hey, how are you guys thinking about budget? How are you thinking, what are you seeing from like a demand perspective? And we started making some decisions around that. And I realized that, this would be a really good opportunity to get just folks together in general, to bring the CMO marketing or just the marketing leadership community together and have open discussion, open dialogue around these types of questions that we're all kind of in together. CMOs, we're in a position where we have to lead through this. And I think for many of us haven't been through similar types of downturns or potential downturns. But here we are. Certainly, I don't think anyone's been part of a global pandemic, and we all have to learn from each other. So that's the idea behind CMO office hours. And from what the experience of these meetings is interesting. Intentionally, they're not meant to be a marketing thing. So you signed up on a Google form. I sent an invite. The process is starting to break because there's 1,300 people on the invite, and the opt-out process is fun to manage manually. So we got to figure out more of a medium-term strategy there. But it's raw. It's a Zoom. Your videos are showing. You can unmute, and I think that's the hope of sort of the spirit of these meetings, that you can feel comfortable to contribute and be part of the conversation. So with that, we've provided something called Slido. I'll put the link into the chat here. If you do have any questions, you can unmute, but it's also just easier to put it on Slido, and then we can walk our co-hosts and panelists through those questions. We can kind of tackle it that way. Apologies for putting the wrong link in the email and hitting you twice on that. We'll make sure not to have that happen again. So with that, why don't we go ahead and dive in? So I'll introduce my co-hosts, Brad Lande-Shannon from CultureAmp. Super excited to have Brad here. We've gone back now a few years. I'm a huge fan of CultureAmp in general and everything that Brad and team have been building. Kyle Lacy from Lessonly. I have a card on my desk that is the only card on my desk actually from Kyle. This is brand will always win, which is something that he and I think, share and have in common, that this belief that brand is something that maybe prototypically was a B2C thing. But in B2B marketing, there's a big opportunity for all of us to differentiate and grow our businesses by building great human lasting brands. And Sydney Sloan, I'm not sure, Sydney, if you're on the call.
I'm here.
There you are. Hey, Sydney, how are you? From Salesloft, huge fan of everything Sydney and Salesloft have been building for years. So thrilled to have you guys here. Thank you for being a part of it. So why don't we get started with just a quick high level question, and then we can dive into Slido. But so how are you doing as marketing leaders right now? I just want to check in. What's sort of the state of the business now, I don't know what week we're in, week 8 of lockdown or week 8 of this. We asked this question week 1 or week 4, and I think in those weeks, like the answers were quite different. And I imagine it's a little bit different now. But how are you doing personally, and how's the team kind of holding up through all of this, all of these changes and challenges?
I don't mind going first. It's funny. I just got off my marketing leadership team call, and we're talking about this because there's for us, we had to cancel our summit a week out. And so it was just kind of all hands on deck for the first 3 weeks, just pivoting and changing and doing things in real time. And then how do you now move that to trying to go back to how you used to manage and plan, and going from, just absolute, I don't want to say chaos, but it was pretty chaotic, to like, okay, we need to calm things down now that we figured out, likely not going to do in-person events for the rest of the year, and reshaped our marketing plan and changed some of the priorities. One of them being to embrace the base instead of owning core markets. Getting through that, getting the teams reoriented and readjusting the plan, and now trying to get to like, okay, guess what? It's Q2 tomorrow. Like, what are our priorities for the quarter? How do we communicate this back to the team? And trying to get back to a little bit of the way that we used to function, but doing obviously it all virtually.
Yeah.
I mean, other than all my notes are on construction paper now, and I have children that are half naked all the time behind me, with my children, of course, not other people's children, but we're the same kind of as Sydney. I think that we swung the pendulum a little bit too far on the empathy side, which, I mean, I'm sure you could chalk up to Hoosier hospitality because we're all based in Indiana, but we are now finally getting back to the point where we're trying to do things like we were pre-COVID. So my team especially, I have BDRs and SDRs in marketing, and compassion fatigue hit them pretty hard. And we've spent the past 4 weeks trying to dig out of that. It also hit me personally pretty hard, and I didn't actually know that thing existed, that compassion fatigue existed. So it's been pretty rocky overall. We're lucky that we sell online training software, which is needed, but it has not been an easy process because we've had to reallocate a lot of our trade show budgets and stuff. And overall, it's more of an emotional state that we've been trying to manage for the marketing team as a whole.
Super interesting. I resonate that. I'm curious. There's a chat that came in around how do you define compassion fatigue? Because I'm feeling it like in life in general, and just like there's a lot of our conversations so far have been around like we rewrote all of our outbound scripts to lead with more empathy and not be salesy. I think all of us have like some customers that are asking for like financial relief and those kind of things. And I think over time, it just kind of weighs on you a little bit, and you kind of want to try to find the opportunity to get back to some semblance of being normal. Is that kind of how you guys are thinking?
Yeah. I think it's mostly just, because most of us were not impacted directly by what's going on, like family members being sick or whatever. We ignored the way we were feeling no matter what. And hearing our CX team was getting the brunt of it the first couple of weeks, right? And I don't think we we dealt with it, and then it all just hit like 3 weeks in, and everybody was like, I don't understand why I'm so tired and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, because we're watching the news and we're just trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And I didn't think that it would have that much impact on my team from an outbound perspective. Thank God our creativity kind of shone through, which helped us in the long run. But
very cool. Brad, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, also have a 3-year-old in the background you may hear from in my office / playroom. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit, it's interesting. It's sort of meta for us because we are a culture measurement company. So I posted a link there. We did a podcast on compassion fatigue, and it was about I don't know, it launched maybe 3 or 4 weeks before all of this hit. We had no idea this was going to happen, but we talked about empathy, and so it's interesting timing. And the other thing I will say is that there was a great article that was surfaced around grief and the 5 stages of grief. We also have looked at the sort of Kubler-Ross has 7 stages of change and transformation. And so, in that shock stage as a marketing organization, what I actually noticed was there was like an enormous amount of chaos, like people trying to solve the problem and, like rushing to try to do something quick and like getting really adaptive. And so then I felt like people were doing even more activity to try to find maybe like some purpose or meaning. So there was just a ton of things going on, and we were doing more than we normally would. I would say, after kind of the shock, we kind of then, quickly moved to denial. And now I think we're in more of the frustration stage, which is like stage 3. And it's just like, how do I have my goals and what am I going to be measured on? And like, yeah, so I think there's a lot we're at a little bit more of a tension point right now.
Well, gosh, I appreciate for all of you guys the transparency there. It's definitely like, we're all so when we say we're all going through this together, like literally we're all processing live, and having that framework of the sort of grief stages, I think is an interesting one to benchmark against. I'm not sure where we are as a team. What I do know is I think we have a little bit more hope today than we did maybe last meeting and the week before that. I think all of us are, we're balancing the, companies that are customers that are either furloughing employees or what have you, all of that is hitting us. And so from like a customer success post-sales perspective, it's been, something that we're all hands on deck around. Marketing is helping quite a bit, or at least starting to have a more active role in the customer success world. But also what's interesting is like, for our business, at least, and I think for most of your businesses, like we sell to B2B companies traditionally. And so we're starting to see promise at the top of funnel. We're starting to see hope that people are buying again, that they're considering technology purchases. And so that's giving us some good signal that as an industry, although it is not the same, we are not in the same place as we were in January. We are starting to try to combat compassion fatigue, combat frustration, and get to a place where we can be productive again. So that's giving me some hope, and the team some hope as we're returning, doing our best to kind of move forward. Well, let's look to Slido. I'm going to share my screen really quickly here. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them. So we'll take this first one, investing in marketing. Where do we start? So Sydney, you mentioned the protect the base kind of concept, which I think is something I've heard a lot on these calls from other marketing leaders. But where are the big investments of time, of what resources we do have at our disposal today? And then the question about brand and content and organic kind of came up as well. So I'm curious if anyone wants to take that. Where are you really spending your time and focus from the marketing perspective today?
I'll say one thing about brand in particular, and I think we have just recently we made some shifts within our structure to actually give a little bit more separation to brand from like more growth marketing. And honestly, we made that shift in our organization, I would say about 3 to 4 weeks before all of this happened. And ironically, part of what that allowed us to do, which I'm grateful for now, is that in the face of all this crisis was not the time to be hitting people, especially HR leaders for us who are in war rooms with CEOs trying to figure out what the F to do. So in a way, we just went completely 100% towards brand. Like we are not selling anything. We are just servant leadership at that moment in time. And so the first 2 to 4 weeks, we were just thinking, how do we produce content? How do we give people exactly what they need right now? And some of it might be linked back to our product, but it wasn't really the mindset that we were having. And we really leaned heavily on community. We knew that during crisis is where communities come together. So we looked at all of our chapter leaders and our community channels, and can we distribute content that could be really useful for them to enter those conversations with more data, more information, to make the most educated and wise decisions. So I would just say that like our growth marketing engines, we like really pulled way back, and just said like, there's going to be a time and a place to ramp up, and right now is not it. So that was like a big shift for us, like sort of more immediately. I will say now we're starting to pick things back up. So we're looking more at what are the things that we're doing there? How do we start to add more investment in some of the more traditional growth tactics?
I'll draft off that what Brad said, because I think it is that balance between brand and demand. So what we've done is like we over pivoted almost to like, okay, we just need to help. And so what are the best practices and tips and tricks from high level to like, how do you work remotely? How do you get your headset properly set up, and how do you test your internet? And so we focus like on little pro tip videos that we were just pumping out as fast as we could, just to be helpful. But at the same time, managing our online channels, where all of our CTAs used to drive to demo, to driving to this, what we were calling COVID, Thrive in 20. Now we're calling it Thrive in 2020 because nobody wants to hear COVID anymore, in marketing. So that balance between serving online experiences that drive to a help site versus driving to demo, and figuring out what that line was, like what people were searching for on the SEO, on SEO or PPC, like when do you send them for help versus when do you send them for an opportunity? We are fortunate in that our demand has gone up during this time as well, and so and I manage the inbound team, so we're doing really well. But then balancing that with sales teams are being impacted, and so for our customer base, how are we helping them and leading them down the path of using our platform more effectively to drive their own demand, to kind of help them perform depending on what industry they're in, which is so interesting to watch. Like just the variation of what our customers need is not a one size fits all, because it depends on who they're selling to and how we help them. The other thing that we did in terms of shifting investment is, we had some internal infrastructure that wasn't optimized. And so trying to make sure that we shore up our just internal engines to be able to perform better online. And so that just takes a lot of grunt work behind the scenes, but happy to report we're going to implement Marketo. Don't even talk to me. Like, I don't know why it's taken this long. And I thought Matt there, so he's probably laughing. We were lucky that we had a strong outbound team, but we're going to merge into the new age.
So it was really interesting for us because we kind of had FOMO, because we know that this market, everybody moving remote was good for online training software or sales enablement software. So we actually ratcheted up our spend and we made some bets, like some morning brew stuff, email newsletter. We were talking to NPR. We decided not to do that from a radio perspective. So we ratcheted it up because outbound was hurting. So we needed inbound to go up. We're lucky that organic search is a huge driver for us. So that maintained itself for the most part, even saw increases there. And then we took a lot of our trade show money that we got back from event, from sponsors for our sponsorship, and we put it into career coaching Zoom calls for our customers. Because I think what we saw really, really quickly was a lot of our admins and managers were being furloughed or fired, and those were the conversations that our CX reps were happening. So we quickly pivoted to say, all right, we're going to hire career coaches, executive coaches, financial consultants, and we're going to run these Zoom calls over the month of May to try to support the people who are fired or furloughed. And that was an easy shift for us because we don't really talk about our product a lot, which hurts us sometimes in the long run. But we made the decision to say, all right, we can do the demand side, but we're going to put our trade show budget into events that help the people who are fired, the ones that needed the most help. And so we don't know what's going to happen with those events. We're seeing good pickup, but I also don't want to report on them like we sold out a career coaching event, right? Because people need the help, and we just want to try to help as much as possible. So that's kind of how we shifted.
That's great. Yeah, I think in a similar case for us, what's interesting is Front has been in market for some time with our product, but a lot of the brand work was actually what I started working on coming into the role about 6 months ago. So I echo what folks are saying, that the focus on organic and community and content development, the good news is it's free-ish, and that, you're using your resources internally. You might pay for distribution and different things, but we're kind of pulling that back and spending a lot of time just incubating kind of the brand story, working on like new messaging, the website, and that stuff that we think is going to be meaningful for the business over time, and especially pertinent now when expressed through the lens of helping people. So I think I joined the group here, and that being an important thing. And if you're an earlier stage company, on this call, investing in the content marketing machine now, building your SEO posture, spending time in organic, that's a great place to start building for growth and start getting your name aligned to the category or the movement that you're creating. So that's great. We'll jump right back to Slido here. It's somewhat a tactical question, but how, Sydney, you talked about SDRs or BDRs on the inbound side, being productive. We're starting to see a bit of uptick too. Our outbound team is actually carrying the torch for us right now. What seems to be working right now with getting meetings booked? And the question goes on to ask about like ABM or other kind of tactics too, but what are the tactics that are driving pipeline during a pandemic? It's crazy to even put all those words together.
Whoa.
My 2 cents on it is we threw out the playbook. We threw out all of the sort of scripts that we had come up with from cadences, and we've rewritten everything to be personal emails, personal outreach. That has seemed to be a good improvement for us. We even in times have gotten folks that said, hey, like, we're not, because of various reasons, we're not interested in buying right now, but I really appreciate the approach. Like, thank you for not making this like a rote email. So that's one area. Second is we pivoted to target specific verticals that we think could benefit in times of, maybe they're counter cyclical, and during times like this, they actually end up being mission critical. B2B customer success is one of them. I know I'm biased coming from that world, but we're talking a lot about protecting our base. I think companies that sell to customer success teams have a big opportunity today, and several others as well, if you look across like industry verticals and stuff along those lines. So those are just a couple of things that we've done that have helped. But in general, I think that I may not have said the same thing in early March, but I think our outbound teams are finding success now when leading with the right message to the audience that can hear it and is ready to hear it. I don't know if any other folks have any other tactics.
Exactly what you said, plus, and this is one of the silver linings for us, is like, oh yeah, people realize personalization works, and leading with empathy works, and being helpful works. That's what we've been preaching for a long time. We pivoted our team like the first week to changing all the messaging and using Lessonly to train them on all of it. So we're big fans of Lessonly. The other thing that's worked is also adjusting our direct mail, and I put that in air quotes because we use Alice and Sendoso, but the Alice campaigns has really worked because people get to put in their own address. You don't have to do all that extra work to try and find out where they are now. So Alice has been more effective in that matter. And we've run like a 30 for 30 program. So 30 minutes and we'll donate $30 to Meals on Wheels and feeding the elderly. So that was a huge win for our ABM marketer that came up with that idea, and that's been super successful so far.
That's awesome. I love that.
This is Brad. I will, we came up with like modified Corona personas that are basically like companies and individuals and like what they're facing right now. So there's like, you know, the more troubled orgs, and there are certain industries that are obviously hit harder. So we created talk tracks around each of these and then tried to let people segment as they're talking to people, which of them they fall within. So yeah, we identified industry types, what's top of mind for them, what are some of the discovery questions we might ask based on that, and adapted our value prop to each of those. So that's one way that we tried to move quickly so that we gave people content they could deal with on inbound and outbound.
So ours was, I'm gonna off Sydney's point, ours was direct mail. We sent out 3 different campaigns. We're lucky that we designed a board game last year, so we're sending the board game so they could play with their family, Llama Land, and then we had a La Marita kit that's a cocktail kit, and then there was a Let's Stay In with a Grubhub and an Amazon gift card. And it allowed the AEs and the BDRs to reach out to people to get their home addresses, and it also helped us connect. Outside of that, we've also used donorschoose.org, where we will, instead of saying we'll give you a $50 gift card to like talk to us, we say, hey, here's $50 to give to a school in your area because you know they're hurting right now because they're not, like, as they're coming back into session, it's going to be important. We all hope they come back into session soon, right? It's going to be important to give back to those teachers. Outside of that, outbound, we have no idea. I'm going to be completely honest with you. It's we've shifted messaging. It's working. Enterprise is working better than commercial for us. Commercial for us is a lot of software companies, so I think, and sales teams. So I think there's some issues there. We are just now shifting verticals, which we have not been good at in the past. So Anthony, I'm glad you brought that up because it's something that we didn't, I don't think we shifted fast enough to find those verticals that we know were improving during the pandemic instead of the opposite. We just kept going after the normal. So that when I'm going to look back 10 years from now, when we're all old and crusty, I'm going to say that's what I should have done. Just shifted faster on the account side.
That's
vertical
awesome.
side.
The other, there's some good ideas coming in on the chat too for folks that are thinking about other ways to do direct mail or other ways to contribute. One of the things that I mentioned this in a previous meeting was Square actually released an interesting thing where you can type in the zip code of one of your prospects, be it maybe in their corporate office, and they'll bring up all the small businesses in that area that are offering gift cards. So if I think actually for all of us, all 4 of us are in different states right now, or at least 3 of the 4 of us are. It's hard to know in Indiana, like what, for me personally here in Arizona, like what the small business that Kyle might be grabbing his coffee from. Square is a great resource, offered up that great resource for us to do that. So I thought that was just another cool thing that people are looking at doing. Awesome. So let's try to predict the future now, which is of course impossible, but this is a question because we kind of have to in a way, at least from a planning perspective. I think everyone has maybe different dynamics in terms of how you're thinking about H2 from a planning perspective, but board meetings happen and these questions come up. And so to the extent you're willing to share, and I'm happy to give a point of view on this, how do you think, what does the world look like after this whole thing happens? And I won't take it as far as after a vaccine in 2021, like who knows, for me, who knows at this point, but coming out of the sort of stay-at-home order that we're on now, as we look to back half of the year, how are you thinking about spend? How are you thinking about targets? And again, to the extent you're comfortable sharing, or even for how would you advise a company that is thinking about this stuff overall? And so I'll just offer a perspective. So for us, I think like many companies, we went and kind of reforecast like the rest of the year and said, hey, here's what we think like the number will look like. And that came at the cost of expenses. And so, marketing is one of the first teams to get cut. And so, we gave quite a bit back. A lot of it was field marketing spend that we were starting to spin up, conference. So Sydney and others, I don't know, Brad, you guys got a show too. Super empathetic to having to wind down existing programs. We did not have that challenge, but my heart goes out having been in the event world quite a bit. But now that we have the adjusted plan, we're hoping we think we have the right financial plan then to deliver on that. And it's really like we're just not hiring a bunch of more people this year, and we're trying to get more out of the team that we have. And that extends to programs too. Like we're trying to invest in, as I mentioned earlier, content and SEO and organic. We're not turning off paid, but we think paid is we have to be more thoughtful with how we distribute content. So I think in general, our belief is that from the adjusted plan perspective, all the changes we made in Q2 hopefully are conservative enough to get us through the rest of this year. So we don't have to do it again. So we don't have to reforecast again. So we don't have to allocate spend again. We did it once, and we think we're in a good place, hopefully, to deliver it for the rest of the year. So that's kind of what our thought process is. But I don't know if folks have anything to add or any other ideas to contribute.
I mean, we're going to continue investing. I think what we're going to find is that our two main focuses are sales teams and call centers, customer service teams. And the customer service teams are still working. And so we're just doubling down. Large telecom, like our industry verticals and enterprise, it's very important that we double down there. I think where we're putting the most focus for H2 is event strategy. We're testing like virtual cooking classes, mixology, wine tastings, where we're shipping things to people and you have a chef do crap and it's fun and blah, blah, blah. If those work, we're going to continue doing them because they could be even more effective than having a $6,000 dinner and name your city, right? And so that's where I'm focusing a lot of my attention, because I think our messaging continues the way that we have always talked about, because it's always been about continuous training, whether you're at home or at work. So it's mostly just around channel specific stuff that we're focusing on, is how do we make sure we're spending money correctly. And we are getting, I think, to your point of being better with the team you have, we're not planning on extending as a company really, except for maybe product. And we're getting way leaner and better, which I think has been a positive coming out of the pandemic, is that we're just getting more streamlined, both from a spend perspective as well as a people perspective.
I think a couple of weeks ago, we were still hopeful there'd be events in the second half. I am less convinced that's actually going to happen. And as we were negotiating locations for our roadshow, we were putting in a 30-day cancel clause with no penalty. So we reduced our risk in signing up for the different venues. And with Dreamforce just canceling yesterday, I think that even sends a broader signal into the market as to not expect it. I didn't expect big events, but just like, will 50 people show up to an event, or is it 10? And so for us, that focus on the digital engine and the one-to-one, the one-to-few, and the one-to-many approach. And so, how do we do things that are account specific, that are meaningful with account teams and senior leadership, and more of and then like things like this, Anthony, like the CXO level roundtable where it's less than 20, so everybody can fit in a Zoom box and be present, because as soon as you go to a second slide, like you start to lose people, and we want it to be active and interactive. And so that's why we're targeting, it's like how many people can fit in a Zoom window. And then, what does it look like? And we actually just launched it this morning. I haven't even gotten to click into the site yet because it happened now. A virtual event series by persona. So I don't think we're looking to recreate the conference with the multi-day. It's like, how do we get specific to one of our personas? So like Kyle, like for your CS teams or sales leaders, and kind of go deeper for them in half-day format. So it's kind of rethinking the roadshow concept and trying to do that virtually. And then hopefully we can get really good at it where we can like spin it to new personas and get that to be repeatable, and how frequently can the team execute and manage. One thing that I don't like what's happened, and I hope returns to new normal, is that people think they can spin up an event in 2 days. Like, hey, let's do a webinar tomorrow and we're just going to blast everybody and hope that people will show up without proper promotion and, you know, doing it the right way. So I don't know when that fatigue or trigger response will stop, because we just had it happen to us this week where we sent out a reminder last touch email. I had another 700 people register in a day for an event the next day. So I can't predict that yet, but I'm hoping to go back to proper promotion.
Yeah.
I'll echo some of what's been said, but we had a large scale conference in October, multiple thousands of people. We just canceled it this year. Just didn't feel like the prudent thing to do, and we made that call probably a month ago. And it felt like even at that time, October, things are going to be fine. But, and then we do about 50 events per quarter globally. So we are a heavy event focused business and that's executive dinners and, all the things. So we've just shifted all of that. So huge, change obviously on the budget side of things. I think one of the things, we're looking more at that especially from the brand side, is taking a lot of that and actually thinking more about brand investments for customers. So like a huge shift to customer marketing for us. So how do we actually take our existing base, invest our brand dollars there to create a richer experience for them? So we're doing lots of like roundtables, like bringing them together. I mean, similar to what we're doing here, like 15 to 20 people, and we facilitate and we actually say, let's learn from each other. Let's be the connector, so that you have a bunch of chief people officers that are learning from one another. So really just thinking more about investing in our existing base, looking more closely at retention and expansion revenue, because we're a SaaS business. So yeah, there's been a big shift and a focus there.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, thanks for sharing those insights, folks. I think and I wanted to maybe double click a bit on the field marketing ideas, because there were some really, really good ones that were shared here. The customer marketing roundtables. Again, this program has been a big learning for me of just getting great people together to talk in an open kind of dialogue. Is extremely powerful. In general, I'm super excited about the like in-home experiences. I guess I don't know what to call it, but like wine tasting, mixology, like virtual chef type things. So I think you wrote that down. I wrote that down as well. So thank you for that, Kyle. Is there and several others? But there's a question here that came up on this topic of can we learn anything from this? Like, is this the new way of doing field marketing, of having kind of more of a digital version? And I'm not talking necessarily in terms of more corporate events of like conferences, virtual conferences, but this idea of like, 20 or fewer, 50 or fewer, whatever the case is, virtual events. And then this is a good point kind of existentially, but now we're competing for time with companies that are not necessarily competitors, right? But our colleagues. So I'm curious, as you think about the promotional kind of component of virtual field events, which are not webinars and not virtual conferences. We're getting very specific here. A, is this the future? And B, how do we think about promoting these things and not just contribute to, maybe more noise out in the market?
I don't think it's the future. I do think that people, and I see it already in my personal social circles as well as professional, crave human interaction. I think all by now we're like, if someone wanted me to invite me to dinner, I think I would show up at the dinner as long as it had proper social distancing. And I think the big events are going to change, but I think that as soon as it's possible to lighten up a little and people feel safe, that they still will want that human networking and human connection, and just the stuff that you learn differently in terms of how you bond and meet with people. I think it is harder in these kinds of virtual events, although for those of us that have been going to the same ones and starting to get to know people a little bit more after 3 weeks of, being in the same round table, maybe you can get to know people a little bit better. But I think it's different if you sit next to them over a dinner and get to know them personally. That said, I think that balance between how do we do that, and then I'm pivoting my field marketers to be more ABM experts and cross-training them on ABM and getting them to partner more closely with the field teams and doing more account-based programs.
So we're viewing virtual events as an add-on to our field events. We're kind of like Brad, where we're doing about pre-COVID, we were doing about 40 field marketing events in the US a quarter. So HAE gets their own dinner. And what we were finding in New York, Boston, San Francisco, is that people didn't want to go to a dinner because they didn't want to try to get back home. And the dinner was around 6 p.m. and they had kids, and it was really, I don't think I can make it. So we're going to use it as an add-on. We're going to still have dinners if we continue to see, hopefully we all go back to normal at some point, right? But we're also going to have these virtual events to say, hey, if you can't make the dinner, we're going to do the same thing, but in a virtual environment, because it's half the cost. And so we can try to do a little bit of both. I do think that trade shows in general, we were lucky that we always pivoted the ABM route for events. We were never ones to drive thousands and thousands of people to a webinar. It was mostly just trying to get 20 people on a call or in a room. So we're going to continue that route, but we're investing more in the Conceros and the Frost Sullivans of the world, where it's I think Sydney mentioned, it's more of the one-to-one conversations that they set up for you with your buyer instead of it being a booth at a massive trade show. I don't think those are going to change. I think those are actually going to be more popular as we move forward, but you'll never see Dreamforce go away. Let's be honest. I think that Mark Benioff would never let that happen. But at some point, I think they're learning as well with their new, they have their new virtual event series that they're running that's amazing. And I think they're learning from that as well, that they can have Dreamforce year round instead of it just being a huge event.
I have just one prediction, and I think some of this is our playbook for events was kind of already geared in this way, partially because of our brand, but our in-person events, we valued connection over content. So it was really about the people and the humanity and the vulnerability. And that was just part of our playbook. And I think what will happen after this is that people will gravitate more towards those things because we've learned now and we have a habit now of getting the content in this way. So if you're really looking for the really rich educational content, I think there's a ton of ways that we'll continue to do that virtually. I think the other thing is, because of all, the shift, we're learning what's really essential. So we're learning, actually, we cut things and there was a major change. So I think that we'll be able to rebuild in a slightly different way. And we might come back with things that we were doing before that we weren't, and cutting things permanently that we had to remove in this time just to be budget conscious.
Yeah.
What are a couple of those things, Brad? I'm curious.
In terms of what's new,
that you don't think you'd bring back?
I think a lot of traditional conference sponsorship, have a booth, stand at a booth, engage with people at that conference. I'm just questioning a lot of that spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars for some of the larger scale conferences. We'll learn here how much lead flow we're losing from that because they're not happening. So yeah, that's one example that I think is a big part of our sponsorship budget.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I found that I found the same to be true for our traditional SaaS conferences, and that you have to be there, or there's this FOMO that, so here's $200,000. But for industry verticals, where if you have a chance to be the coolest brand at the trucking conference or the logistics conference, we see a little bit more uptick there. And of course, it's not $250,000 typically for those types of sponsorships. But on this, actually, there's a great chat kind of going in parallel to this conversation. I think folks have a lot to say about it. I think if I'm summing up everyone, we're all kind of saying the same thing, in that we crave this human connection thing. It's actually really important. And it turns out that what this process might have taught us is that it's actually essential. And so we might have through this process realized that, the second we're able to safely get back together in front of customers, in front of prospects, in front of each other, man, we need this. We need this as people. We need this as marketers and as just folks in this space. So encouraged by that. So one last tactical question, just because I think it's interesting for the virtual programs. So before we move on from those, are there any tactical like products or different things you're using? I think Zoom is like electricity and water now to us. Like we need this, but are there other non-Zoom tools that you've used for or are starting to look at even for virtual events that might be helpful for folks listening?
Yeah, I'm such a fan of this product. There's a company called Socio, SOCIO. I think the website's socio.events. They powered our mobile app for our user conference last year, and it was so good. But the brand marketing team at Nike was at our conference, and they went directly to the Socio guys and were like, we have to have this product. That just tells you one thing, right? So they shifted their product to do a virtual event / communities product, and it is gold. It is freaking gold. So we're going to use it to launch Llama Nation, where we're pushing our user conference into an online community that's mobile app driven. Highly, highly recommend you checking them out. Socio.events. And that's number one right now for me, other than, of course, Zoom, which you said.
Yeah.
We just did an evaluation as well and have been lurking in all virtual conferences to try and figure out what works well and what doesn't. And some of the things that popped out to us is just having recorded sessions that you put people to with links doesn't really work, and putting the time and investment to make sure that your speakers have high quality setup is necessary, because it's super distracting when they can't hear and everything. So that balance between what is recorded, what is live streamed, and your investment in those two environments, plus the ability to network. And I noticed someone was talking about breakouts, and I love that in Zoom too. We're looking at Hopin. We haven't signed it yet, so can't 100% agree. And now Socio might get a kick at it. But that one has kind of definitely come up high. Hey Summit has also been, was ranked. I'm just looking at our comparison chart and ranking right now as I say this. And Big Marker for a webinar platform is kind of up and coming company out of Chicago. There's plenty of them out there, and I'm glad to see it. I know if those of you that went to the Topo conference yesterday and kind of saw some of where sales and marketing tech and event tech was like the lowest bottom left, so it's great to see innovation in these areas and so many companies pivoting to try and help us deliver a better experience, because it wasn't a lot to choose from before. So that's cool.
Totally.
I'm nothing more to add from what's been shared. Yeah.
I'll add a couple more, only because I just caught up with my CEO from Gainsight yesterday, and they're doing a 15,000 person virtual version of their live conference. Couple things to note. We used Vidyard for, I won't spoil it, but we're in a room full of friends and marketers, right? For pre-recorded live broadcasting. And so effectively it's pre-recorded footage, but when you hit the site, it picks up on the video basically based on where the kind of master play button hit. So 10 a.m. it starts at 10 for wherever you are. So that Vidyard was helpful for that. They shipped cameras to the speakers. I think Sydney, you mentioned a little bit of this too. So that the quality is just a little bit better than what we have from our devices, which was interesting. And then they used a product, I forget the name of the product actually, but maybe I'll follow up in the show notes here. But they used a product to basically create this idea of breakout rooms, which is something that's harder to do in Zoom. So the idea of there's a keynote track, and then you can actually navigate to the concurrent tracks that are live streaming at that point. So I think it becomes a lot less stressful on day of, but a lot of work kind of pre the event to build up to that. But on the day of, you're able to like fully engage on like conversation and chat, and ensuring that folks are getting what they need.
We're doing a combination of pre-recorded for breakouts and then live streaming for keynotes.
Awesome, that's great. Cool. Okay, we got 10 minutes left, and so I want to hit on this one question, and then we'll try to wrap it up because it's a good one. I admit I've been struggling with this. I don't have a great answer for it yet, but it's interesting. Some companies have been doing pretty well through this. Other companies have not. Certainly as I think of folks selling to the travel space, logistics, others. Even the live events, I think that community to the point made earlier is pivoting around virtual, but still, I mean, a lot of folks have been hit a lot harder than others, even within the context of B2B software. What's the appropriate way to talk about this? And I'll give you a case in point. We're looking to launch a similar type of series like this, but a sort of leading through crisis kind of series. Where we're interviewing a lot of companies that have been forced to make adjustments and have been forced to evolve and change. And we had to ask ourselves, do we also interview other CEOs and founders who are doing really well right now? Or is that sort of tone deaf in this market? So I don't know how you think about this, and maybe this isn't as much of a reflection of your own businesses, but just like marketing advice to other folks that are struggling with this question. How do you communicate success in the shadow of COVID?
We had to deal with this firsthand because we raised a Series C that finalized. Our form filing was like the end of March. So we were very lucky that we started in November. And what we were going to try to do is just hold it. And what we made it more about, we still did the release because press picked up our filing, and we just tried to make it more about community, and we did not share it as openly. Usually for our Series B, we did like a LinkedIn takeover where everybody created videos and everybody was celebrating, and our CEO just made a quick video, and that was basically it. So we tried to back off of it. I have, other than that, man, I have no idea. I have no clue. It's really, really hard question to answer.
I think you want to see some rebound. I mean, like Google's results is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
And of course, people are increasing in advertising, and so I think if you didn't have good, like if it was all bad, like just keep on pulling down and down, and we have to have hope for the parts of the economy that are able to survive and thrive, and to make sure that we're balancing out. And it's good for the market, and anything that could spark interest into giving people to wanting to invest again. I mean, so I think it's that hard balance of being super empathetic to businesses that are not going to survive, but also showing that there are parts of the economy. I mean, that's, it's the nature of the world, and all kind of pieces go with that. I definitely don't think like boasting or anything like that would be good, but you definitely want to see where there's bright spots.
Sure.
Just a quick call out. Like, so we have a 7-part journey, similar to what you were talking about, Anthony, which is it's a campaign we're calling Working Through It. And so we have intentionally, within our content plan for each part that we're rolling out every 2 weeks, we have a good news section. Like, what is the good news? So because I think that similar to the research that's done with depression, like you focus on what's positive, like it actually does help lift your mental health. So we're trying to also be that place that people come and can see the silver lining too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we I shared this on the last call. We got inspired by John Krasinski's Some Good News, and we started a Slack channel called Some Good News, and we're just sharing these like bites of goodness that just to inject some positivity into the day, goodness relative to the business, and stuff that we're seeing. So that's actually been awesome, and been pretty well received. All right. Well, we've only got 5 minutes left. So maybe on in the spirit of some good news, any other tips that you've maybe rolled out, little hacks that you rolled out for your team and that we're all now working remote, be it, things you've done in Slack or other ways to make the team feel somewhat connected and sort of, Brad used words like going through this together. Is that what we said? Something along those lines. Ideas shared in the past include an emoji check-in on Slack to see how people are doing just by kind of selecting an emoji. I mentioned some good news, virtual stand-ups, all these types of things. But what's worked well for you and your teams?
We have a part of our core initiatives is a team health. So it's actually a group that's within our team that focuses on how we do in our internal Amplify surveys and what we can do to help. So it's kind of training and social. Two hacks I would say that I see us being adopted really well is the virtual card. So we celebrate our loft anniversaries and birthdays and we use this virtual card and everybody signs it, and I'm signing a couple a week, which is really cool. The other is people got very tired of the happy hours. And so just having structured ones. So like we have done some really fun ones around scavenger hunts where kids can get involved and finding things. And we've done like, guess who this person is, where you send in a memory from high school or whatever, and then you have to guess who it is. We've done Pictionary. That one's shown up a couple of times. And the last one is that, and this is just personal for me, and I host the 7-minute workout every day at 2:00, which is also 5:00 because the majority of our company is in Atlanta. So it's a healthy boost. It holds me accountable for getting some exercise in mid-afternoon. But it's been a really great way for a smaller group of us to get together and share something that's healthy, but also get to know. So as I'm doing my skip meetings, I already know those kind of 10 people that join every day, and we spend 15 minutes, 7 minutes working out, 7 minutes stretching. You actually get a good workout, and you can sweat in 7 minutes. You'd be surprised.
Awesome. Writing that one down.
We did the digital cards as well. We give a Golden Llama award out to our employees as well as our prospects. We made a digital Golden Llama certificate you could edit in Google Slides, and you could save PDF and send it to people. The other thing we did is we actually did pen pal cards that we mailed to prospects that have our Ollie Llama stamps and stuff that we used for Yellowship, our user conference. So that allows people to actually handwrite notes and send it to individuals. And then of course, every single thing that people have been putting into chat, like MTV Cribs and Crazy Hat. And then eventually the team was like, hell no, we're done. We don't want any more, nothing. Like the happy hours, nothing, we're done. We don't want to see any of you anymore. But that's what we're doing.
I'll give a quick one, which is we just experimented with doing a 30-minute block that the whole company is invited to. And then we have some kind of artist performance. So it might be someone's that's, playing guitar or doing something. So we're experimenting with that. And then we break out into smaller 3 to 5 person groups, and we do like an if you really knew me round. So people spend maybe 10 minutes just like, here's what's going on for me, and you get matched sort of at random. So you might talk to someone from another country or another office that you don't see that often.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, great. We're out of time. Thank you to my co-host for being a part of this. This was an awesome session. We do record these. We'll send it out for those that are asking. But yeah, my biggest takeaway continues to be as, the ebbs and flows of this, scenario that we're all in are coming at us. It's just so nice and helpful to know that we're all here for each other and all here kind of going through this together. So that does make me feel better about the path forward. So thank you all, and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, everybody.